Hey guys, welcome to a video, and I'm going to be talking all about HackMotion. By the time you watch this video, you'll have more information about HackMotion than you currently have. And by the end, you'll have the information of whether you should include a HackMotion into your training routine too. So currently during my coaching, I'm using the HackMotion a lot, and maybe it's used in around 70% of my golf lessons right now. Now, if I talk about the golf swing a little bit, when I'm looking at golfers trying to improve their contact, improve power or improve direction, typically we're looking at two main areas. Is it something that's related to how the body's moving, or is it something related to how the arm and the wrist move? And yes, sometimes it's a combination of the two, but I found HackMotion's been a great tool in trying to provide answers to students and also just quantify some of the data. And when I'm saying to them that I need them to bend their wrist in a certain way, we can start to put numbers behind it to know whether we're doing too much or too little. So let me talk about this training aid a little bit more. I'll include a screen recording so you can see live what's going on. And hopefully by the end of this, you've got some idea of whether this is right for you. Now, HackMotion were kind enough to provide this HackMotion for me. And honestly, if I didn't have it, I would buy it again, because it's just such a good tool for when I'm trying to provide answers to students on why their ball is going where their ball is going. By the end of the video, there's also a link that you can go buy your own version of HackMotion. And if you do choose to purchase, you'll have a better idea of which model you should go for. So let's start real quick. When you do get the device, it'll come with its own neat little carry case, charging cable, and a glove clip. So you can wear this with a glove or without. Now, I have found that I don't use the glove clip too much, and I would just use a normal wrist strap and place it over the glove. So don't worry too much about the wrist clip if it's something that you don't like to use. The device charges by USB-C, very easy to charge. Even if you don't have the cable with you, I'm sure you can find a USB-C charger. And the beauty of this is once you download the HackMotion app and you turn on your device, it automatically recognizes your device and what membership level you have. Whether you've got the core model or the pro model, the app automatically knows this. Now, as I open up the app, I'm going to turn on my sensor. So I've turned on my HackMotion, I've opened up the app, and let's have a look at what we can do with this. So I've put it on similar to how I'd wear a watch, and then I've put the wrist strap on as well. And what I'm trying to do is line these two sensors up relatively close. It doesn't need to be absolutely accurate. We are going to calibrate it in a moment. But definitely no trouble at all by wearing the wrist strap and a golf glove. I found sometimes when I put the glove clip on, it would move during the swing. So I definitely prefer to keep this wrist sensor on. Now I'm going to turn the volume down, because I've noticed when I do a recording before, the HackMotion audio gets picked up by my microphone a lot. So I'm putting the volume on quite quiet. So let me just take you into a first mode. I'm going to go into start practicing. I'm going into free practice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put a benchmark on at the beginning, and I'm just going to click down to my name. So you can see multiple students that I've already used this with. And I'm currently putting this on my lead wrist, and I'm right-handed. So I'm holding it in a position that feels relatively flat to me. I'm going to rotate it up by about 35-40 degrees and press it in position. Bring it back down, and now I'm seeing that the extension and flexion is near to zero. When I bow it or cup it, it starts to change. But what I should find is when I hold it what feels flat, that number is pretty close to zero. Now it's the fun part. We click start practicing. I've hit one shot. Let me grab a 7-iron and do a little bit of damage too. So let's see some shots. 7-iron. So not a bad golf shot, that one, for me. A little bit of a push. Could be a push draw. Maybe we can find out in the video why it wasn't a push draw. But as you look at this, let me just explain some of the numbers on here, and we can see this. So typically we would call this extending the wrist, and we could call this flexing the wrist. So extending and flexing. And that's something that we can look at. And ultimately, if we look at this in certain points of the golf swing, the more we bow the wrist, or the more that we flex the wrist, the more the club face starts to point down to the ground, and the more that we extend the wrist, the more the face starts to point up. But there's a point in the golf swing where extension of the wrist can actually help to make the golf club point straighter to the target. So as I just scroll up so you can see the data, you'll see from my address position, I have a very strong left-hand grip. So my left-hand grip is very much on top. And this we can see in the address part where it says that my lead wrist is extended by 36 degrees. But which is really neat about HackMotion is if I click on that, you'll start to see that they explain this to you, the extension, the flexion of the wrist. And then it also puts it into a category. So my grip type would be strong, 36 degrees turned. Now strong could be in the region of 30 to 45 degrees. And they categorize this through the chart. Now, Me as a golf coach, this is really good because I can show somebody how much they are changing their grip. So they may feel that they've moved their grip from strong to weak, but what happens is a golfer puts on this really nice new looking grip that they've done that might be somewhere in the neutral position, but they don't feel comfortable. They keep re-gripping that golf club, and before we know it, they've actually moved back into the numbers that represent a strong grip. So it's a really good way to audit yourself, and for many golfers a grip change may take 2 weeks or more, but you can definitely speed this up by just checking yourself each time that you put that grip on that the address position is in the range that you're looking for. But yeah, HackMotion do a great job of displaying this data. You can always look back at that and you can check where's your grip now, where should it be, and what goal are you trying to do, because that grip type is really going to change where your ball goes. Now bearing in mind I've just told you I've got a strong grip type, but we look on my last shot and my club face was a little bit too open. So for me, making that grip weaker might not be the first place to begin. Then if we go into the metrics, we'll start to see some numbers. At my address position, I'd have quite a strong grip. As I go into the backswing, I lose some of that flex, so my wrist starts to flatten, and then into the downswing, that lead wrist bows even more. So from my address position, I'm actually losing over 30 degrees of extension in that lead wrist. Now if I look at many of the students that I see, I would actually see an increase from their address position to the top position in the amount of extension in their lead wrist. And I will go into it shortly, but there's a great drill that I've been using a ridiculous amount to try and get people to keep their wrist in a more stable pattern. And what you'll find is better players have got an ability to keep the wrist stable but close the face where they need to get the ball to start where they want to. But amateur golfers, typically when they start to make a mistake by cupping the lead wrist too early to an excessive amount, they need to find some way to compensate that. But let's get back to that a little bit later. So going back to the chart, we'll see my address position, and as I go back, the extension in the lead wrist as the chart starts to go upwards is showing that I'm starting to extend the wrist a little bit more. And then somewhere before the top of the backswing, my lead wrist is starting to flatten. Then as I come down, there's a little bit of a flat spot. So somewhere between the top, my lead wrist is cupping and then later flexing back into impact before I hit the ball and then re-extend the wrist in the follow through. Now this is the beauty of HackMotion. You may have a certain pattern, maybe a stable pattern or a rotational pattern, or even a long hitter's pattern, which has different wrist movements. And once you identify which pattern works better for you, you can use the templates in here to monitor which wrist positions match up with certain arm movements and body movements. I think this for a golf coach is invaluable at measuring what you can't always see. Now granted, I can look at the video and notice how my lead grip is turned away from the target, and I can also look towards the top of the backswing and notice that my lead wrist is relatively flat. But at how many degrees? How much is enough? This is where the expertise of the data collected is really good for you checking these pieces. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up my pattern and I'm going to look at one that's a little bit more stable. Something I always dislike in my golf swing, I tend to get a little bit too long, so I've got a bit more of an overswing. And as soon as a club starts to overswing, it tends to induce a little bit more cupping in the left wrist. My right elbow lifts. There's a lot of pieces that I don't particularly like in my golf swing. So let me show you a pattern that's got more stable wrist positions, and this is one where the initial setup position has some closing of the club face, some flattening of the lead wrist that is maintained from address to the top of the swing, and then as it comes into impact there would be a little bit more flexion to the lead wrist to potentially close the face to the path. So I would click on here in the top corner where the draws are, click on the benchmark and then choose a swing, and then we're going to a long game shot and we're going to go for the knuckle down pattern. So when we look at that, there is quite a good description in there about the knuckle down pattern. Now this pattern is very good for golfers that I see day to day that tend to come down with a club face that is too many degrees open, a lead wrist that is too extended, and the only way that they can then make that club face square to the target is to extend the left wrist even more to close the face to the target more degrees. So the face is open in the downswing, and then the lead wrist extending even more would allow that club face to square. But the problems you have with that is you'll hit the ground behind the ball more often, the ball goes too high, you can even start the ball too far left. Then you start to go a little bit more down the rabbit hole, and this early release is what we're basically looking at, which is their method to then close the club face enough degrees so the ball starts straight enough, and now the swing itself is wider, so they're hitting the ground behind the ball. Oh no, we've got a new problem. We've got an early release, a high ball flight, we're losing distance, we're hitting the ground behind the ball. How do we stop that? Well, we can extend and jump up a little bit more. Now we've got early extension. It's difficult. Well, what if we just start to come down and we keep the lead wrist a little bit flatter, close the face to the path more degrees so that we don't need to flip the golf club in the last part. We don't need to extend the wrist as much in the final part of the golf swing because it's already pointing where we need it to. So now we can actually lay the extension of the wrist. We can keep the hands forward for longer and hit that penetrating compressed iron shot that we're all dreaming of. Sounds too good to be true, but it really could all come from this knuckles down release pattern. We'll say in this, during the backswing, we'll pretty much maintain the amount of extension we've got in the wrist, but in the downswing, we're going to gradually start to lose that. So let's have a look at my pattern versus this pattern. So how I would typically present this to a student is the grip's a variable in the golf swing. It's absolutely a variable. There's many different ways to do it. And also people have different limitations on how much they can move their wrist or their arms. So if you're extended too much or you flex too much in the lead wrist at address, don't worry too much. Use that as your constant. So if I'm 23 degrees too extended because of my stronger grip, fine. But then as I swing, I want to maintain 23, 23, 23. Or roughly in that area. So if I look at this and I'm getting a perfect result at the top, that would mean actually I've lost that extension a little bit too much. So what we'll notice in my golf swing is visually the club face is very shut at the top. Well, normally a strong grip and a flat left wrist create a shot that goes too far left. Guess which way Mikey boy misses? I miss to the left. The more I look at the data, the more I get answers to my own problems. And the more I get answers to my students' problems, and I'm absolutely sure the more you look at your data, you'll get answers to your problems too, especially in terms of direction. Now within this, we could also look at different benchmarks. We can choose a tour swing. We can have a look at another player. And maybe we look at something like a Dustin Johnson pattern. A DJ pattern many of us are quite familiar with, and at the top of the swing, that lead wrist would be more bowed. Now again, Dustin Johnson would have a different orientation to the lead grip, but he is losing about 20 degree of flex as he goes back in the backswing. So if we look back down at this chart, you see the stability to my swing, the upper line there, and you look at DJ. So DJ would actually be going back, the lead wrist would extend, and then it would go into a gradual rate of bowing, and then just prior to impact, it would actually extend again. Great pattern for somebody who's got a lot of rotation and very little arm rotation, because when you look at somebody like Dustin Johnson going a little bit deeper on this, his lead arm is further from the body, so he cannot rotate this hack motion device in the same way that somebody who keeps the lead arm closer to the body. So for him, that lead wrist extension would close the face more degrees to get the ball going straighter. Golf gets pretty interesting. Let me get back onto what hack motion's doing. So as I'm saying, you can look at the data, you can find your blueprint, and you can analyze it. Now let's have a look at some of the other data points in here. I'm now going to pull in the amount of ulnar deviation and radial deviation. So ulnar deviation would be the movement downward, radial deviation would be the movement up. You may call this hinging, unhinging. But if we're keeping the correct anatomical terms, we'll call it radial deviation and ulnar deviation. So I'm going back to pattern 8, and we're going to look at this compared to the knuckle down pattern, the more stable pattern that is very suitable for many golfers. And if we look at this, if we look in my movement, early on the backswing, we've got this up spike, which would be me hinging the golf club. Now, I also have a pattern that when I come down, I may increase that hinge. And we can actually see that from when I get to the top of the backswing, I actually continue to hinge that golf club a few more degrees before I come down. So this would be more radial, come down, dump it at the bottom. It clicked for me there, sorry about that. That actually recorded the swing. But that upward to downward pattern can help to create speed. But at the same time, it would make it more likely that the toe of the golf club would dig into the ground. I may be early extending, I may get some toe contacts. We look at the professional pattern, they've got less of this. You can see it also goes up and it also goes down, but not as volatile as mine. So when we're looking at the radial ulnar, yes, it can help to create power, but it can also be a very big sign that we've got some early extension in there. And finally, one of my favorite ones is having a look at the rotation of the forearm. So sometimes I get golfers and I find this part quite empowering, where I will see a golfer and at position 6, when the club's parallel to the ground, the golf club's pointing down, yet their ball keeps going to the right. Now, many golfers are scared to rotate the forearms. They might call it a flippy release. But if you've got a club face pointing down at this point and your ball's going to the right, we know we're doing something too little. It could be extension of the wrist, it could be rotation. So this is measuring how the Hack Motion sensor rotates, and it actually tells us quite a bit. So if I were to swing back and I were to try and go a little bit across the line at the top. So my golf club, as we watch this one, starts to go a little bit across the line at the top. And we look at this graph, but in a moment we compare it to what I'm about to do, which is a feeling of being shorter and a little bit laid off. So as we look at the data on this, this is shot number 3, which would be the one where I'm across the line. And you see this kind of W shape here, right? And what that is when we look at the line going below its original position, it's a sensor rotating away. Now as we get to the top, it's starting to change direction as I go across the line. And that across the line is this W, where we've got it away and then turning back, and then as I come back down, it's going back away. So we get a W shape to the rotation of this device. So we've got the pronation away, we've got the supination towards. Again, you need information on this, click down at the bottom, click on this, and it'll mention how this is measured and what the pronation and supination is on the device. But then when I look at this one, where I didn't go across the line as much, you'll see a much more stable top position. So we're not getting as much movement on the forearm, not as much movement on the shaft. It looks a little bit more like Tiger Woods under Hank Haney. All right, I'm being a bit very modest on that. I definitely don't look anything like Tiger Woods, but that's better for me. That one's better for me. But when you look at that, we start to see, we can also see what would it look like if we drop it on the inside on the way down? What would a shallowing movement look like? So let's try. We're going to do a little bit more of a Matt Wolf pattern. We'll take it a bit more on the outside. We drop it on the inside. Let's see how that looks. All right, we got it. That's not the way for me to play golf. And then we'll have a look at a pattern which is more outside in. Some of these movements are quite difficult for me to recreate. So as we look at this data, some of these alien patterns start to really deviate from the dotted lines that are the benchmarks of some of the best players in the world and some of the best patterns in the world. And I also like this feature, just it's one that not many people use. So it's maybe more of a hidden feature in a way, but a lot of people overlook this one. So if I click on where my address position was and I front face that, and then I move it into impact, I can start to see how my wrist position looks at impact compared to where it looked at address. And I think that's quite revealing to know what you can see on video sometimes, but you can see it more in a data point. How much did it rotate? How much did it extend? Why is my ball going where it's going? So let me just touch on this biofeedback piece. So we've got an immediate mode and we've got an aftershock mode. So if I put it into the immediate mode, I'll instantly hear the noise when I hit the right range, but also I get the vibration as well. So let's say I'm trying to work on the flexing of the lead wrist. So I want to look a little bit more like Dustin Johnson at the top. So I can click on here and I can put my range. Now normally if you work off what your address position is and look at how much you want to do it. So this is all going to be personal, but let's just say I'm trying to reduce the amount that I flatten the left wrist because I was tending to bow it too much. So I've put a range of 28 to 22. When I hit that, there's that heavenly noise. So I've got it on audio and vibration. And now I'm just going to hit a couple of normal shots. But when I reach that checkpoint, I can feel the vibration, I can hear the noise. When I'm out, either side, I don't get that. So great way, I'm going to hit some shots. I should get a little bit of address. There we go. And then at the top, I'm trying to maintain it. So I managed to do that. I managed to feel that I kept more cupping. I can feel the vibration. And now my ball didn't go to the left. Sorry, I just pulled up the data, but my ball didn't go to the left. I managed to not bow my wrist so much. I managed to keep it somewhat more extended. The ball didn't go as far left. My club face at impact was now a little bit more open. So where this could be really good, this is tip number 2. Sneaky little drill for you. You're doing a grip change, put this on, calibrate it. My grip's too strong. So let's say I'm finally going to get round to improving my grip. So I'm going to put this range on here. So first of all, I click into the address position and let's have a look at the range here. So neutral grip would be somewhere in the range of 10 to 30. So let's just jump into the middle, 20 degrees. So taking that information, I now click onto biofeedback, immediate, and we set that range of 10 to 20. Now, you can actually also invert the range, and inverting the range would mean that outside of this range, you would hear the noise, but inside of that range, you wouldn't. So then when I go back down, now we get the simple visual cue of where I'm good. So I'm here, I'm trying to put my grip on, my old grip comes on, and where is right for me? Right, there we go. Well, this feels so weak, so different. And now look, as soon as I've put my hand back on, where's it gone? Back to 32. So I've got to really manage this left position. There you go. So now I'm just about in range. This feels different. I did a very soft shot, but no doubt about it, that club face was completely different for me. Grip change. You've got a stubborn grip that won't change. This is definitely going to change your grip. So when I go back to one of my more natural swings, I'm very aware that I sometimes dig the club into the ground, I dig the toe into the ground, and I get these toe shots. So if I look at my impact position and I look at the radial ulnar position, at impact, my radial deviation is -18. So I may feel like I don't want to ulnar deviate as much, and I want to feel that I'm going to keep the hands lower. So it's also something that I can change the sensor so it gives me feedback at impact. And if I'm able to keep the golf club more radial, the toe of the golf club in the air more, I'll be more prone to staying down on the shot, keeping the backside back. Yet if I'm somebody who severely strikes the ball off the toe, I may be standing up, more ulnar deviation. Not a good way to play golf if you're trying to hit the middle of the golf club, or if you're a serial toe hitter. So now I'm going to end practice. Now the beauty of this, it does keep a record. So now when I do go out of that, I can put a name into this. I could call it YouTube session. It's saved in there, 42 minutes. Wow, it's been a long one. So we'll go into guided practice, great way for you to go. So on this one, it's all calibrated, we're still good to go. And I'm going to hit 10 shots. Wish me luck, 10 shots. So I'm getting warm, the microphone is being moved. AC may come on. Okay, 10 shots, let's give it a go. Left, right, middle. And as I'm doing these shots, this is not scripted, but shot number 2, my lead wrist is too extended, the ball goes too far to the right. Let's keep going. Right, I'm a better golfer than this. I'm just trying to get these shots out there. Low point always ahead of the ball. I'm quite happy with that. Never practice this way. It's too many shots too fast. Grip was stronger. How many are we at? 3 to go. Now when you do this, of course, you don't want to be doing this rapid fire. You want to be taking your time, treating these like proper shots, going through your routine. So at the end of that, I'm then going to start to get analytics. Now following that, I can look into the individual shots and start to see some of the good ones. So we take this one, and maybe we call this a good recovery shot. It was too extended at the top, managed to save it at impact. But generally my pattern would be that I'm coming into impact sometimes with a wrist that's too flexed. And again, if I link that to the ball flight I've got and it's not what I'm looking to achieve, I can start to change these wrist positions to start to improve it. Now what it'll start to do is tell you on a hot streak how well you're doing these movements over a period of time. And it'll also start to suggest a training plan in which are drills that are suitable for you to make these changes. Now I've been filming for about 50 minutes and we've only used 40% of the battery, so don't worry about the lifespan of this. It's a great device. Then inside of a good range, I get a summary, like a report card, like a naughty child, how well I've done, how many were in range, how many were too flexed, how many were too extended. Top of the backswing, I'm too extended. I try and save it, I try and bend it, but then by impact, I'm too flexed. And it's kind of a cool little feature that I get a hot streak. I managed 2 in a row, so am I consistent? So now I'm going to go back to the home page just one more time and I'm going to show you one of the drills that I absolutely love. Really, I love this drill. And it's a static top drill. So we already saw that my lead wrist was too extended. This wasn't a segue into this part, but it's so true. So I'm going to click on the static drill, 10 reps. So it's calibrated, it's ready to go. I take my address position and then it recognizes them in my address position. There you go. And now I've got to go to the top and I'm too flexed. I'm in range. And you can just hear that noise. So This is one that, and I'll share a video with you. I had a really fun time with one of my students doing this, but multiple students have used it. But it's a great way for them to get that feeling. And it's that aha moment, that hallelujah moment where it's like, really, I need to do that much or that little. So yeah, address position. And then the key I like is once you've got in that start position, is going to the top and not looking. No, too flexed. So I thought I'd got it right then. I hadn't. We'll try again. So I'm getting this feeling. This is 10 reps. It's slow. I check. Oh, I was almost there. I had to. I'm getting the vibration. I'm getting the noise, but I had to do a little bit more than I realized. We'll go again. Good. So I'm now getting that feeling, and I could go on and on and on and do the 10 shots, and it tells me what percentage I've got right. If you get the core version, this is included. I'm ending practice early on that one. I want to show you a little bit more. This drill is a handcuff. It actually helps, but so many golfers find this one really difficult. So you take, I'm Johnny Mac today. So you take your address position, you swing it back to position 6, which is club parallel to the ground, and you hit the ball all in one motion. So this one takes a little bit of time of getting used to. It's how far you need to go back. Address position, position 6, get in range, and then hit. Still too bowed. But a great drill for position 6. My preference, I really like the P4 drill. I think the backswing drill is great. This one, really hard. It takes a lot of patience to get this one right, but it is one of the pieces that most golfers get wrong. So the gloves come off, and I'm going to do a little bit of putting. Now, I put a 16-foot putt on there. It doesn't matter. I just want you to be able to see where the ball's going. Sensors back on. The glove is off. And I put a benchmark of a medium 3-meter putt by a tour player, so we can just see some of the data, and then we're going to take it. Let me just go back into my account, and there we go. So I'm going to recalibrate. I did take this off. We'll just see how quick it is. So recalibrate, start position, holding it out in front of me, in position, rotated up, in position. Actually, I'm not quite happy with that, but oh, I'm in range. Start practicing. Definitely there'll be some arguing that you can't practice putting on a simulator. It's fine, I'll take that. I'm just trying to demonstrate what this does, but I do find that the best putters, the better players, manage pretty well with a simulator. Now this ball's breaking left to right. If I make a putt, I've made a mistake. So we're going to hit a couple of putts. Take my setup position and just rock some 15-footers. Slight pull. That probably will go in. Nope. Same again. Slight pull. Just go one more. So even though in putting we feel like the wrists are very stable, oops, I kind of hit all those putts to the same place, but let's just have a look at this data. So all the graphs are up, flexion, extension, ulnar radial, and the rotation. So I'm going to get rid of a few of these, and let's have a look at the rotation. So if you think of this, as I'm putting back, the club is going to open slightly and close slightly. But I would say that the address position and the impact position, we're looking for not too much variation between those. Now if we're looking at the flexion extension, I can actually see that as I go back, I tend to bow the wrist and then I extend it and cup the wrist as I come down. So if I'm trying to control the loft of the putter and I'm trying to control the face, then this extension in the wrist may not be very helpful. The ball will be more prone to going left. The ball may launch a little bit higher, skid across the green. But what I notice in my putting, and this is really kind of eye-opening to me, is that I increase the amount of flex in my lead wrist. So if I look, I start with my grip 5 degrees to extended. So at impact, I'd also expect to be 5 degrees to extended, but I'm not, I'm 1. Meaning that I'm starting to bow the wrist more, and that could be part of the reason why I've been hitting putts too far recently. I'm actually de-lofting the putter in the same way that I de-loft my irons. You can also look at the radial and the ulnar deviation. I do have a tendency to be a little bit of a toe striker on the putter, and it does seem that in the stroke I dip the toe of the putter into the ground too. So some of these very, very subtle wrist movements that you may not see. And let me do one away from the screen. Maybe you will spot it. Maybe you're a hawkeye. But I do have a tendency to hit it on the toe. So more stable on that one. The wrist movement didn't move as much. But I've still got that little bit of bowing in there. It's advisable for golf coaches. If you maybe pair this with some other software you've got, maybe you've got SAM, PuttLab. And SAM PuttLab is really good at telling you what the putter's doing, but not great at telling you what the wrist and arms are doing. It doesn't measure that. So why not combine wrist motion sensors and take the guesswork out of the body movement and the arm movement and the limb movement, and then have Sam tell you what the club's doing. In the same way that I'd use TrackMan to tell me what the ball's doing, and I'd be using HackMotion to tell me what's making the club influence where that ball's going. So now we're going back into the putting analysis. This one's really sensible. It's just trying to keep the range of movement inside your wrist within 2 degrees. So if you've got more than 2 degrees of extension, we get this that pops up, 2 extended, 2 radial. I'm being told off. All right, let's give it a go. So I don't consider myself a bad putter. Actually, I consider myself quite good, but definitely it's not been behaving as much in the recent weeks. There we go. So my ulnar radial, the up and down, was fine, but I was still bowing the wrist, so it's still going to come off a little bit hotter. So let me see if I can do this one again. This time I'm not going to shaft lean this as I go back. I'm going to feel like I keep it more stable. Oh, that definitely felt like I launched it higher. No way, absolutely no way I would be able to spot that on video, the change of 1 degree of wrist flex or wrist extension. Let me just do it to the extreme. What if I increase the shaft lean by increasing the flexion of the lead wrist as I go in? Let's see. So I bow the wrist, I deal off the put, 23 degrees flex. Now that is something that you would spot, right? You can visually see that. Let's try again. So this time I'm going to try and do the opposite, and I'm going to early release, 12 degrees to extended. Very subtle, but how many golfers do we see a little bit flippy with a release? So I think this is the most underrated part of HackMotion, is the putting training. And for sure, I could charge this, I could go to the practice area, I could spend most of the day on a putting green, and you know what? No problem at all. This is going to last me. I've been filming for over an hour now, and we're still at a plenty full battery. If I click on here, the battery's at 60%. I've been filming for over an hour. Sorry about that, guys, if you've stuck around to the end. Okay, again, trying to extend the wrist, not trying to drag. It feels a better stroke. Yeah, it's good. I'm in range. Great tool. So if you're on the fence of whether you want to go for the basic model or the upgraded one with the putting analysis, I'd recommend it. If you're a good putter, maybe you don't want to work on your putting that much, or maybe it's something that you're not that interested in. But for me, there's no doubt that the next time I go to the golf course, that this will be part of my practice routine, is putting this on and just making sure that I don't push the hands too far forward, because it's been costing me a lot of shots, missing these putts, hitting them too far and not always making them on the way back. So as I look at one of the better putts now, more in the pro mode this part, but I'd be able to see that my wrist graph is much more stable. I'm not getting the cupping of the wrist as I come into impact. And ultimately, I'm going to feel more confident making putts, knowing that I control the loft and I'm not going to find some putts go really far past. It'll give me more confidence to hit the putts a bit firmer, because I won't be de-lofting the putter and making the ball go too far anymore. Hopefully, guys, you've enjoyed the video. Like I said, HackMotion provided me with this device. I was curious to try it. I was excited to try it. I have a lot of information into wrist graphs that I've been trying to apply on video, but now I've got the data to back it up, and the data has been invaluable at trying to help people make changes just quicker. Really, ultimately, some of the golf changes we're trying to make, time is a big constraint for us. Some of the quickest wrist changes have happened with me using HackMotion, because I'm able to quantify what I'm doing, and also the students get an instant feedback. It's not just me saying it's too much, it's too little. It's me saying you're close, we need a bit more. Or, in contrast, you're miles away, let go of what feels comfortable and overdo it. And then we get near to that range. So it saves you time. But HackMotion were kind enough to send me a device, and I've also got a promotion code too. So the promotion code will be in the bio. If you use that, you are going to get a discount, and I thoroughly appreciate you sticking around for this video. There's a lot of content. I sincerely mean it that HackMotion has been invaluable in a lot of the coaching that I've done. I think you saw the amount of students that I've already put through this in the last 2 weeks. There was a list of students that I've had using this in the last 2 weeks to try and make some kind of change to the wrist. It's empowering. If you're a golf coach, you want the pro mode. You want to see the subtleties in the wrist graph. If you're a casual player with a higher score, the core model will likely have all the features that you want. You can do the drills, you can check your address position, your top position, your impact position. There's plenty that you can do with a core model. If you're curious about your putting, then get the model that includes the putting too. I think it's the most underrated part of HackMotion, is the way that it measures what we do with the wrist. Thank you guys for staying tuned on this exceptionally long video. If you have any more questions on the wrist positions, because they're incredibly complicated, then please ask away in the comments and I'll do my best to answer those questions too. Thank you guys. Appreciate your time.